is up? You have found We Like the Blazers. I am Brandon Goldner, and across from me, you're going to see him from now until the end of time, your dying breath as your lungs rattle with the last little bit of oxygen, your eyes open. You will see Connor Bergen. Connor, what's that? That's a little heavy, but anyway, what's up, brother?
Oh, I'm doing good. That's the most creative and most fun intro I think I've ever gotten on anything. So thank you, Brandon. It's good to be back.
My brain does weird stuff on low amounts of sleep, man. We were in DC, as that's where we recorded our episode with Senator Ron Wyden. If you haven't checked it out, please check that out. Got back a little late. Flight was a little late. Cassie and I are like early to bed people, and so it was also slightly delayed. So I got home, couldn't go to bed, woke up groggy, didn't exercise. So now, like I told my boss this morning, I was like, my brain is at like 78%. But yeah, it's Monday. How are you doing, man? How was your weekend?
Oh, I'm good. A little bit more sleep. I did not travel to Washington, D.C., but I did go to the remix game last night or yesterday afternoon and saw Senator Ron Wyden again.
Did you dap him up and say, yo, what's up, brother?
I did not. I kept a distance, but I did see him in attendance, and I was like, wow, I'm a lot of like proximity with Senator Ron Wyden for me this weekend, so that was funny. And actually, I tweeted about BlueSkyed about him being at the game, and then I think
we're allowed to still say tweeted, because I'll tell you what I'm not going to say is skeeted. That's not entering my lexicon. Don't care what the platform's called. So yeah, tweeted is fine.
Oh yeah, I like that. A lot better than skeeted.
We're just not gonna. It's 2024, and we're just not gonna do it. I don't have time for it. Just not happening.
Also, like, yeah, we don't need made up words anymore. We can just. I posted on BlueSky about Senator Wyden being there, and Sean Hyken posted back. He reposted it and said, "Oh, he left before halftime. Not a real sicko." So
it's almost as if he's, busy or something.
A busy man. No, I like to envision that he went home and watched Donovan Clingan tape. So I think he had other Blazers matters to go do.
I don't think you did it on purpose, but we will be talking Donovan Clingan later in the episode. Shout out to Senator Ron Wyden and again his staff for chatting with us. That was super fun. And shout out to the Remix, who they won that game, didn't they?
They did. First win of the season. Nice. It was their second home game. They're 1-5. They started their season like 2 weeks ago, but they've been on the road for a long time. So just got back to the Child Center on Friday, and they are Sergi Olivas, the new head coach, got his first win. There was like a fun little celebration in the locker room they showed on social media, and that team jacks up a lot of threes. A very fast-paced style of play, so it was fun in the Child Center. It was my second game, and the whole thing you keep hearing about the remix games is that like they're super intimate, and that's kind of the selling point. It's not fancy marketing. It is really intimate. Like you can hear the players talking, complaining to refs. The athleticism still really high for a game that you're paying like $5 for. So it's a cool little experience. And I do want to show one thing real fast.
Okay, guys, Connor is slowly shifting off screen.
I am back.
He's back now. And what
I have here the Hand Fruit Nation mascot. I don't know if that's actually what it is called, but I am calling it the Hand Fruit Nation mascot. Shout out Kaylee Harden and Basket Ghoul.
Shout out to Basket Ghoul.
Maybe the godmother of Hand Fruit Nation. I don't know if that's an official title, but she designed, the shirts last year with the like Disney style apple, and now they have like actual stuffed animals of these things at remix games, and I thought they were going to be a lot smaller, but it's pretty big. So I'm thinking once I get like a podcast background, like the pros do, I might put this little mascot up there. So.
Just for those who are not watching the video, Connor's holding up this plushie that's like double the size of his head. Clearly something you can snuggle with. You could put your entire cat on and would probably fit. And yeah, shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to her business, Basket Ghoul. Go to basketghoul.com. That's basketghoul.com and find all sorts of cool stuff there. Connor, I'm really glad that you got to go. And one more thing, you did write a piece for Blazers Edge where you are in fact associate editor and reporter about how you were saying intimate environment, like cool scene, and relatively inexpensive to go. So, it's accessible to families. That there were a bunch of kids there. Can you just tell us a little bit about how that was for you, like seeing, all the kids hanging out, having a good time at the kids zone? Something that I probably would want to do even as a 40-year-old. Sounds like fun to me, but how was that for you?
Yeah, no, they do have giant Jenga, which I feel like is all ages. No, it was super fun. That was a fun piece to write and interact with all these parents and kids. The thing is, like, I interviewed the business team behind the remix this summer for like a long piece of kind of like looking at how they're trying to build their fan base there. And a big thing they talked about was appealing to families, and I heard them talk about it a ton during our interviews, and I really wrote that piece from that angle. And so it was really cool this weekend to go to the game and, not just hear the words that it's all about families, but actually like with your eyes visibly see that like there are kids running around all over the Child Center. That kid zone is pretty full. And I really appreciated the parents who were so willing to talk to me about their kids hanging out. Because I feel like, when you get approached by a journalist, let alone one who wants to talk about your kids, that is not the most favorite thing to do, but people were super in a good mood and talked about their experience and how it was a much lighter experience than a Blazers game to go to a remix game. So now pivoting from remix to the Blazers, there was a notable NBA retirement over the last week. Blazers legend Rodney Hood, retired, called it a day after a long career in the NBA. Sadly, a career cut short by a lot of injuries, but he mentioned it in his own like goodbye letter, talking about that great playoff series against the Denver Nuggets with the Blazers in 2019, helping the Blazers defeat the Nuggets and get to their first Western Conference Finals since 2000. Brandon, when you think of Rodney Hood, what comes to mind first?
It's funny because when I heard the news, you would think that quadruple overtime game in the second round against Denver would be the first memory that pops up, but it's not. The first thing that came up for me was the best I can describe it, Connor, is an amorphous feeling of a player who's going to come and help push this team over the edge into a true contender, and not because he was a star, not because of that, but because he was such a solid player, so reliable, and the move at the time, I remember it being like, it was an Olshey-esque move because again, the Blazers didn't give up a whole lot to get him, but I really thought, I was like, yeah, like couple more moves like this and baby, we got a stew going. And I do wonder, if not for the fact that Yusuf Nurkic were hurt, if not for the fact that we were starting Enes Kanter, would we have gotten more than the 0 wins that we got against the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals? Because, by the way, Connor, I know it's about Rodney Hood, but really quick, sorry. As we remember those games in the Western Conference Finals in 2019 against the Golden State Warriors, the Blazers had multiple double-digit leads. And it just don't blow all of them, ? So all to say, when I think of Rodney Hood, I think of a time when I had hope as a fan for a Damian Lillard-led team to go deep into the playoffs. And you know what? They did. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, they get like at least 2, right? against Golden State, at least 2 with Nurkic and everybody healthy.
I feel so. There's a counter argument that, well, actually, because of the way that Yusuf Nurkic played, that they would have somehow been worse. Like, I don't really subscribe to that. I mean, we're talking about Enes fucking Kanter here. Like, so no offense to Enes Kanter, but, or whatever. I'm not even going to go there. So
one-armed Enes Kanter, which he fought valiantly. I would have taken a bullet for Enes Kanter at that point in time. And of course, we won't get into all of it now, but his career,
he played well. So,
No, he was great in those first 2 series. Yeah.
So I don't know, man. But Rodney Hood, shout out to Rodney Hood. I mean, he played for 6 different NBA teams, and I think that I can't remember if you mentioned this part. He was trying to make a comeback to the G League. He got injured, and it was just he said it was his body telling him that it was time to retire. But yeah.
No, I looked at that signing that year, like. You said, oh, we got a stew going. It kind of reminds me of like, I agreed at the time for sure. Like it reminds me of a little bit of like the Dallas Mavericks last year when they added PJ Washington and God, who is the guy for the Wizards who is the offensive rebound machine?
I don't remember. I'm not big on Wizard stuff. If you
where is your Wizards tape?
I was just in DC. It doesn't make me a Wizards and Bullets fan. Okay, listen.
Well, they were a team last year who like was a contender, kind of trying to like they didn't have the means to go get another star, so they made great midseason acquisition. Daniel Gibson. God, that's not it. Anyway, yes, Daniel Gafford. I was there we go. I was mixing him up with Daniel Booby Gibson of the Cleveland Cavaliers fame. But
and we all know exactly who that is.
That's like one of my deep pulls.
That is a deep cut, a very deep cut, sir. Do you need a Band-Aid for that deep cut, or will that require stitches?
I will heal. But they made those moves last year to kind of like bolster their depth with like great role players, and that was kind of like what the Blazers did that year with Rodney Hood and Enes Kanter. So it's like they were, like you said, a very Olshey move to kind of like move around the edges a little bit, but it really did make an impact, like better than you could have imagined. And Rodney Hood, after that great playoff series, was playing amazing the next season. I think people forget that because he got hurt after like 15 or so games, but he was playing better than he was the year before. And then I think he had it was either Achilles or ACL that kind of just ended his time with Portland. But I'll go on.
No, I was just going to say, yeah. And I mean, it's a bummer. I mean, obviously, father time is undefeated and eventually basketball players have to retire. But yeah, definitely that moment, the quadruple overtime game, is something that some players never get a moment like that. Even really big stars sometimes never have like a singular moment where it's like, yeah, I was responsible for delivering that game in the playoffs. Pretty cool. So yeah, shout out to Rodney Hood. We appreciate you. Any more on Rodney Hood before we pivot to the modern version of the Portland Trail Blazers?
Yeah, just pound for pound, that game was probably that 4 overtime game was probably the most exciting game I think I've ever watched. Would you put it at that? Like, I know like the Dame buzzer beaters are maybe like the greatest moments, but just like from end to end, that game and like all the twists and turns it took, I've never been more like wrapped up in a basketball game.
That's a great question. It's hard to argue for another game. And to your point, like maybe not moment, but I remember where I was watching that game, and I remember trying so hard not to wake up my then girlfriend, now wife, Cassie, because I was just like, whoa, like stuff just kept happening, and it was like a third overtime, a fourth overtime, like, and at some point, as someone watching the game, you not get numb to it, but at some point, I will also admit, it went on so long, you're like, can someone just win? Like, so there's like a splash of that too. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can beat 4 overtimes for like, yeah, like was the game exciting and close? 4 overtimes? Yes, it was.
No, yeah, the anxiety trip probably the highest. Do I have time for the brief Rodney Hood story I mentioned before?
Oh, we always have time, brother.
Yeah, no, I told Brandon, our dear listeners, I told Brandon about this before. I prepped him on this story. But that game happened when I was a sophomore in college. It was my last day on campus that year at Loyola University, Chicago. And I was a resident assistant at Loyola University, Chicago, which might mean I was a bit of a narc. I had to enforce the rules. Professional narc. It paid for my housing. And that game, like I said, last day on campus, I was at Georgetown Hall, which was like an apartment-style dorm, and there was a gathering of sorts with things, doing things that college kids do at the time when they're in college. And somebody had that game on, and I was like watching it like a lunatic in one room with like a group of people, and I think people were like, "Why is this guy so into this basketball game?" But when you're an RA, if you get caught at a function, the rule automatically is that you are fired from your job, and AKA you lose your free housing. So there's a bit higher stakes to attending those things that add to anxiety. And I remember reaching kind of an all-time high of anxiety at the moment about being like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is getting kind of loud here. Too many people are here.
There, by the way,
it was slightly accidental, but it fits.
Was it? Yeah.
No, it was. And, and I told myself with about 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I said, you know what? As soon as this game ends, I'm getting the hell out of here. And of course, they went into 4 overtimes, and I was
2 overtime. Yeah,
and I was there for another, I think, hour and a half. And luckily, I did leave. The Blazers won, and I left on my own accord, and I did not lose my job. So it all had a happy ending.
That is a wonderful story. I will say, as somebody who also attended similar social functions to the ones that you've described, and who similarly I have a propensity toward anxiety anyway, Connor, but particularly at such functions, when such things are taking place and such people want to be social in such ways that then your anxiety kicks up even further. I can only imagine what you might have been feeling. Here's what I also wanted to say about this too, and this is a sincere compliment to you. The fact that you're a professional narc as an RA, and yet you're hanging out with people, and they all know that you're an RA, and they all kept your secret of your beautiful presence. And I just have to say, I think that says a lot about you, because I think that there are some people who have been quick to, slap the handcuffs on the RA for, so just saying, shout out to you. Even sophomore college version of you clearly had respect to people around them. So
he appreciates it. He could have heard that maybe back then. It would have been done on the solid.
Well, pivoting now from the past to the present, the Portland Trail Blazers, Connor, they do sit at I would say, somewhat surprising 7-10. When you take a look at the standings, you'll find them 13th in the Western Conference of 15 teams, just a handful of games above the Jazz and the Pelicans, poor Pelicans. And just, last couple of games, we're not recording in time to catch the Grizzlies game tonight. Ja Morant is in fact available again, which probably is not great news for the Blazers. But the Blazers having went on that 3-game win streak, lost to the Thunder, lost big to the Rockets, but then came back in the second of a back-to-back against the Rockets and winning that second game, which was great. So before actually, really quick, because I do want to talk about what I think is a pretty significant injury, even if the injury itself is not significant, thankfully, as far as we know, to Donovan Clingan. Let me ask you something really quick. It is November 25th. The Blazers are 7-10. Does that record surprise you at all?
I would say yes. Yeah. Like, I think going into the year,
just to say,
no, everybody looked at their schedule as like a murderer's row of like a start, and the team not only do they have a few more wins than I would have expected, but they just look better than I expected them to.
In most games.
In most games, they still like put up the stinker every now and then because they can't shoot to save their life some games. But the defense is so much further along than I would have expected at this point.
Is the defense real, or is it the beginning of something real?
I think it is, and I've noticed like readers on Blazers Edge and some social media people comment this of like, oh, you can start to see the vision of Joe Cronin's identity that he's trying to form with this team, which is just like length, versatile, like forwards
for days.
Wings, man. And I love it after being
opposite of O'Shea was addicted to guards, and Crone Bone is addicted to wings.
No, even his guards are wings. Like Delano Banton, he's not even he's not like
Banton's a wing, basically.
Yeah, he's not in like an amazing defender, but his length causes problems, and it adds to like these just massive lineups that they put out there.
Deni Avdija can be a primary ball handler, but he's like 6'9". He's guarding Alperen Sengun in the final closing minutes against the Rockets game, which was crazy.
That was impressive. That was Avdija's best game, and like some people think he's kind of disappointed so far, which like, his offense maybe has left some to be desired, but from a defensive standpoint and rebounding standpoint, like you can see why they targeted that guy and brought him in because he fits into exactly what they're doing.
I have a hot take about Deni, by the way, and I feel like whether you think he is doing pretty well, or at least reasonably well, or you think he's not doing well at all, I think it's, are you watching the games? Because there's stuff that happens when you're watching the games and you're like, oh yeah, like I see it. I think that the statistical production for him will follow at some point, even if it hasn't been reflected yet. What do you think about my hot take?
Oh, I totally agree. That is because if you just look at the box scores, you'll see like, oh, he was nothing like special. two for like 10 today, but it's like you see him drawing fouls, pushing the pace, and like getting into the lane, and like there's so many, especially when he was in the beginning where he was really cold. So many of those were like chip shots that he just like, I don't know what was going on, but like maybe he had like the yips or something, but like he just was missing shots that if you look at his stats throughout his whole career, he never missed shots like that. So yeah, like I totally agree. Like if you watch all the games, you see, even if he doesn't have huge box score numbers, he's impacting the game every time he goes in.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And also, I mean, it's fun that, the Blazers, along with the defense, looking different. And finally, the Blazers defense at times looking like what we thought we would get when we hired Chauncey Billups as a coach, who preached defense, right? And we're starting to see some of that. But also the Blazers as a transition team, they at least have players who are willing to and want to run a little bit. And it's a stark, not that they're any good at it, right? But it's a stark contrast. If you watch Damian Lillard for years and years and years, probably one of the most half-court oriented players maybe of the generation. I feel like the contrast is pretty stark. What's your opinion on the Blazers, either their ability to right now or their ability to later be an effective transition team?
Yeah, it's funny because every year for the last decade, they said they would push the tempo more each season, and with Dame, it just didn't really happen. But this year,
and I was never going to, by the way.
No, I mean, come on. No, yeah, and he's great at pick and rolls, so it's just run the pick and roll. But I think, it seems way more tangible with this group, and especially the second units that go in with Deni and Scoot when he's out there, and it's kind of like a younger group goes in. You can see how much the game kind of flips and gets more fast paced, and those are all their young players. So you would think as they continue to get better and take larger roles on the team, that play style will continue.
Yeah. And it's fun to watch, by the way. I enjoy seeing it. And Yeah, we'll see if they get. I've been like, I'm very late to really understanding how to find, use, analyze more advanced statistics, and they are available now. There's different sources you can use, but I'm trying to look at the Blazers as a transition team, as a faster paced team, and the stats say they're willing to do it. The stats also say they're pretty bad at it, and that matches what I'm seeing. So we'll see how that goes as the season goes on. Connor, I did want to talk about something though, and I have a very strong opinion about this. And it's about Donovan Clingan and his left knee sprain. So if you watched the last game against the Rockets, at some point pretty early on in the game, something happened where a Blazers player ran into a Rockets player who then kind of ran into Donovan Clingan, and it looked like he just kind of fell kind of weird on his leg. And in the moment, I tweeted about it on BlueSky. See, I'm going to use the word tweet. And I said, oh, it looks like Donovan Clingan tweaked his knee. He's holding it. He's flexing it. He's grimacing. He's staying in the game. Later in the game, something else happens. Tweaks the knee. Now he's on the ground. Now he looks like he's in pretty significant pain. Oh, crap. Goes to the locker room. At that point, I'm like, he's done. That's okay. He's done for the game. It's great because when he went to the locker room, he jogged off on his own power, right? So you're thinking, okay, something happened, but this is now twice. Keep this dude out of the game. And yet, what do we see? We see him come back onto the bench. We see him with a knee brace, Connor. He's jumping up and down on the sidelines. You can tell he wants to get back into the game. These are hyper-competitive players. We've talked about this before. These guys want to play. Got to protect the player from themselves, Connor. And he re-enters the game and plays, I don't know what, a couple more minutes, something like that.
It's a few more rebounds.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, he had an incredible game, 19 rebounds, 3 blocks, 0 points. Off the top of my head, a couple dozen players in NBA history have ever done that. Most of them are Dennis Rodman. Only 2 players this year have more than 19 rebounds and 3 blocks. The other one's Wemby. Great game for him. Of course he wanted to get back in. It was a close game. I totally understand that, and that's not my issue. My issue is that the Blazers training staff and coaching staff let this dude back into the game. And then what happened? We get the news. I'm shocked. This is my shocked face. I know this is a big rant. I'm so sorry. That Donovan Clingan now has a left knee sprain. He's unavailable for this next game. And guess what? I'm hearing all sorts of stuff from all these Twitter doctors saying that maybe he's got an ACL or an MCL or blah, 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 blah. He's going to be out for maybe days or weeks or whatever. And so I'm sitting here. Why did they let him back in the game? And before I hand it off to you, because this take has become too hot to handle, I completely respect and understand there are things about player health and the training staff that I don't understand. I don't need to understand it. I'm just some dude in front of a microphone. So I respect that. But what would you say to, this is a great way to put it, what would you say to someone like me who is confused about why a very large man who appeared to hurt his knee was allowed to come back into the game and now he has a sprained knee? Like, what would you say to someone like me?
I would say, I get it. like first and foremost,
great first step.
Validation. This is RA training. Validate. No, seriously though, I do get it. Like, there's like 2 things. One, big men get hurt a lot. They're like prone to injuries for being so big. And 2, the Blazers big men, like especially, are cursed. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
So I understand, like, yeah, if a guy, and when you listed it out and you mentioned that it happened twice where there were 2 like little tweaks where he kind of had to be looked at. And when you say it like that, it's like, well, yeah, why did they put him back in this game in late November, So, like, first and foremost, I understand why there would be criticism for that decision. And, like, I'm not saying I disagree with the criticism or that, like, I was super for putting him in the game, I guess. Like, with injuries, I guess I don't, like, fully – like you said, we're put, like I don't fully know the situation. One thing I do know is I don't trust the Twitter doctors always. They scare me. But with the Blazers,
that's fair. That's probably smart not to trust the Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and like hopefully Clingan is good to go after like no more than a week or two. You would hope. Like the Blazers haven't done some big grand announcement. And hopefully, fingers crossed, there isn't one that comes in the next few days. But like, given the Blazers' track record for disclosing injuries and like how they tend to take longer than they initially say, like it is just a huge. I just look at it all as like unfortunate. From like a fan perspective, like Clingan was the most fun part for me to watch this team play.
Yeah.
And he was a big reason why the defense was playing so well over the last few weeks since he got in the starting lineup. I'm getting a little bit away from your original question about the like should they have put him back in or not? And
just talk me off the ledge here, because again, like I understand and respect that an NBA franchise making sure the players can play is about as high on the list of things that matter as you can get. So it's not that they don't have systems and policies and processes and protocols and staff. I'm sure that there's a lot that fans don't see. People like me just go, why do you go back in the game? So, there's no question, I guess, in here, but I feel free to respond however you want. I understand there's more to it than maybe I can see. So I do understand that.
No, and I think what the lesson is from going forward is like, because I'm sure they cleared him. I'm sure they did some measure of tests. We're like, oh, okay, you're fine. Which
and they announced it during the game. They said affirmatively he had been cleared, which suggests that he was looked at. So
yeah, and like, I think the lesson to take from this is like, as trainers and people in the organization, maybe you don't trust Donovan Clingan as much next time he says I'm good to go. Like, and I think
that's a great point.
Like, because he hasn't had an injury history, like if Robert Williams had gotten hurt or had like any sort of minor tweak, for sure he would not have gone back in that game. Yeah. And, like, no matter what he told people. So like Donovan Clingan's a new player and they're getting used to him, and he hasn't had like a bad injury history. So when I'm thinking if he cleared the tests and they were like, and he said, I'm good to go, maybe you trust him and put him back in. But you can see his competitive fervor. Somebody posted a great photo when they were getting blown out against Houston the first game of him just looking so pissed on the bench. So if anything, to spin this in a positive direction, Donovan Clingan has that dog in him, and he's a competitor and he wants to play, which is, that is a nice thing going forward.
I'm sure we'll get a report that they did do an x-ray back there, and it shows that chest x-ray that he does in fact have that dog in him. So I think it's a good point. And I like what you're saying, that, and I know this not as a doctor, but as a person married to a doctor, that medicine is not an exact science as much as we want it to be an exact science. There's so much art in caring for patients, and some of that is the patient's responsibility to follow what they have been told to do with respect to treatment or medication, to be able to effectively and clearly self-report symptoms that only the patient knows. And so I think that's actually a great point, and I feel talked off my ledge somewhat. I like this kind of idea. It's like, okay, now they know that he's so competitive. Maybe we should next time. I like that quite a bit. So he'll be out for a bit. That's okay. Also, to your point about big men getting hurt, we also know Zach Edey, who is another big man, an enormous man, selected in the same draft right before Donovan Clingan, or right after, yeah, number 9, is also out because he's enormous and also hurt. So it does happen. So Blazers play the Grizzlies. Last quick thing, how you feeling about, no, that's going to date this podcast too much. We're not going to do predictions. Anything else that you want to touch on before we bounce for this episode?
No, I guess one last thing about the injury is like, until the thing happens where we get a report that he's out for like months, I'm not panicking or like mad. But if that happens, that'll again change things in hindsight. So like, where it stands right now, I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate. But hopefully this is just like a minor thing, and the Blazers keep going. But that's where I'm at.
I have no reason to believe that there's a major injury right now, and that was never what my gripe was. It was about why risk that potentially happening. I still feel that way, but I do appreciate that you put some nuance on it, so thank you for that. And if you want anything else you want to say before we bounce for today, actually?
I'm good. We're new. We're figuring. Yeah, we're getting our chemistry.
The thing that's funny about this is, for as much preparation and planning as went into our awesome conversation with Senator Wyden, that was all of the energy we had to plan or prepare for any other podcast. And so this time we're just like, let's talk some basketball. And if you want to talk some basketball, you can always do that at WeLikeTheBlazers.com. You can also find us. Yes, Connor, we do have a team account or a podcast account on BlueSky, because at WeLikeTheBlazers.com is now the podcast account, and my personal account is now at BrandonGoldner.com. So you can find me there. You can find Connor there. You can find his work at Blazers Edge. You can find my quote work at Blazers Edge. Connor's work is much more worthy of being read than mine. So please check it out.
The previews are fantastic.
Except for today, which a little peek behind the curtain. Boy, was I tired today. I've already said that. But anyway, you can find our work all over the place. We're doing stuff. We're having fun. And we hope that you have fun with us. So, yeah, until next time, appreciate you all. Thank you. And go Blazers.